The caregiver sang softly to the old man, unaware his millionaire son was watching and changed her life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. It was a quiet evening in a small-town hospital, the kind of night where the air outside was calm and the fluorescent lights hummed softly through the corridors. Anna, a young nurse in her late 20s, moved from room to room, her steps light but purposeful. Her blue scrubs were slightly wrinkled from a long shift, and her tired eyes still carried the gentle focus of someone who had long accepted that caring for others meant giving parts of herself she could never get back. But she didn't mind. Helping people had always been her way of finding peace. In room 214, an elderly man named Mr. Carter lay in bed, his breathing shallow but steady. Anna adjusted his blanket, checked the monitors, and then did what she always did for him. She hummed a soft tune under her breath, a lullaby she remembered from childhood. It wasn't in her job description, but she knew it helped him sleep. Tonight, though, she didn't realize that someone was watching. Standing silently by the door was a man in a dark suit, tall, composed, and visibly out of place in a hospital ward. His name was Ethan Carter, the old man's son. He had arrived from the city just hours ago, called in by the head nurse, after his father's health had taken another turn for the worse. Ethan had expected to find chaos or indifference, the kind he was used to in his world of business and boardrooms. Instead, he found something he didn't expect: gentleness. The nurse's voice was soft, her presence calm, her care for his father genuine. She wasn't just doing her job. She was connecting in a way that made him pause. From the doorway, he watched as Anna adjusted the old man's IV line, her movements slow and precise. The way she smiled at his father, even when he was too weak to respond, stirred something unfamiliar inside Ethan. For the first time in a long time, he felt moved. Anna turned slightly, unaware of his gaze, and continued to hum. Ethan's chest tightened. It wasn't just the song, it was the way she carried herself. The quiet dignity of someone who worked in the shadows of life and death, yet managed to bring light into the room. He didn't know her name yet, but he knew he wanted to. "Mr. Carter?" Anna whispered, checking the old man's pulse. "You're doing great tonight. Try to rest, okay?" The old man stirred slightly, mumbling something incoherent. Anna smiled gently. "You're safe," she said softly. "I'm right here." Ethan took a small step closer, but the faint creak of the floor made Anna glance up suddenly. Their eyes met for the first time. For a heartbeat, the room seemed to still. She blinked, startled, then stood upright. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said quickly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't realize anyone was here." Ethan straightened his posture. "I'm his son," he said simply. "I just arrived." Anna nodded, her voice warm but professional. "He's been resting comfortably. I think hearing familiar voices helps him. I've noticed he responds better when someone's near." Ethan nodded, his eyes still fixed on her. "You've been taking care of him?" "Yes," she replied. "He's a kind man. We all look out for him here." Ethan hesitated before saying, "Thank you." The words felt heavier than they should have, almost foreign coming from someone who rarely said them. Anna smiled faintly. "It's my job," she said, but her tone made it sound like something more. As Ethan glanced down at his father, he noticed how peaceful the old man looked, almost as if he was sleeping through a gentle dream. And it wasn't the medicine doing that, it was her presence. There was something about the way she filled the room with calm that even money couldn't buy. When Ethan finally stepped back into the hallway, he exhaled slowly, his thoughts tangled. He had seen kindness before, but not like this. Not this quiet, effortless sort that didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't know it yet, but that moment watching the nurse sing softly to his father was going to change everything about his life. The next morning, the hospital halls were buzzing with quiet energy as the day shift began. Anna was already there, her coffee untouched on the counter as she reviewed the night reports. She had hardly slept, her mind replaying the strange encounter with the man from the night before. She remembered the way he had looked at her, calm, steady, almost searching. She tried to brush it off as nothing more than curiosity from a worried family member, but something about him lingered in her thoughts. When she walked into room 214, Mr. Carter was awake, his pale blue eyes opening slowly at the sound of her footsteps. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said softly, checking his chart. "How are we feeling today?" He gave a faint smile, his voice rough from sleep. "Better, I think. You sing like an angel, you know that?" Anna chuckled lightly, embarrassed. "I do not know about that, but if it helps you sleep, I am glad." As she adjusted his pillow, she noticed fresh flowers on the bedside table. White lilies. They had not been there yesterday. "These are beautiful," she said quietly, touching the petals. "Your son must have brought them." Mr. Carter's eyes softened. "Ethan," he murmured. "He means well, but he works too much. I barely see him." Anna nodded, sensing the sadness in his voice. "He was here last night," she said. "I think he cares more than he lets on." Mr. Carter smiled faintly. "If you saw him here, that means something." Hours passed in routine motions, checking vitals, comforting patients, recording data, but Anna's mind kept drifting back to the image of Ethan standing in the doorway. That dark suit, that quiet intensity. Most visitors spoke nervously in hospitals, but he had not said a word. There was something composed yet unsettled about him. She could not quite explain it. Later that afternoon, as Anna was preparing medications, a familiar voice came from behind her. "Excuse me, miss," Ethan said, his tone formal but polite. Anna turned, startled to see him standing there again, this time without his jacket. His sleeves were rolled up, his expression softer than before. "I did not mean to interrupt," he continued. "I just wanted to thank you again for taking care of my father." Anna smiled, keeping her professionalism intact. "It is what I do," she replied simply. "Your father is a kind man. He always speaks about you." Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. "Does he?" "Yes," she said. "He says you work too hard, but that you have a good heart." A brief silence filled the air. Ethan looked down, his voice lowering. "He has always been better at seeing the good in people than I am." For a moment the atmosphere softened. Ethan glanced at the lilies. "He likes white flowers," he said. "They were my mother's favorite." Anna nodded gently. "They make the room feel lighter." Hospitals can be heavy places sometimes. Ethan met her eyes, his expression thoughtful. "You make it feel less heavy." Anna blinked, unsure how to respond. "I just do my best." He smiled faintly, then took a step back. "Thank you again. Truly." She watched him leave, his tall figure disappearing down the corridor. Something in her chest shifted, an unfamiliar warmth she had not expected to feel. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hospital windows, Anna found herself in the staff lounge, staring out at the fading light. The world outside looked peaceful, unaware of the small moments happening inside these walls. She thought about Mr. Carter's gentle humor, about the quiet strength of his son, and for a fleeting second, she wondered what it must be like to live in their world, one of wealth, power, and choices. Then she shook her head. That was not her world. Her world was one of compassion, late nights, and the steady rhythm of heart monitors. Still, as she walked back down the hall to check on her patients, she could not shake the image of Ethan's gaze, the sincerity behind his words. She did not know it yet, but their paths were about to intertwine in ways she never imagined. The next few days went by quietly, yet the atmosphere around room 214 seemed to change. Ethan had started visiting more often, showing up early in the morning before heading to work or late at night after his meetings. Anna noticed the difference immediately. The once distant son now stayed longer by his father's bedside, reading to him, sometimes just sitting in silence. It was a small transformation, but to Anna, it spoke volumes. One evening, as she was finishing her shift, she walked into Mr. Carter's room to find Ethan there again. He was sitting beside the bed, his sleeves rolled up, gently adjusting his father's blanket, something she never expected from a man in an expensive suit. The sight stopped her for a moment. He looked up when he noticed her. "He fell asleep," Ethan said quietly. "He kept asking when you'd be back." Anna smiled warmly. "He just likes having someone around," she said softly. "It helps him feel safe." Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "I used to think being there did not matter much. I thought providing for him was enough. But now I see how wrong I was." Anna hesitated, then spoke with gentle honesty. "Sometimes being present is the most powerful thing you can do. Money can buy comfort, but it cannot replace care." Ethan looked at her, a faint smile forming. You sound like you have seen both sides of that. Anna shrugged. I have seen enough to know that kindness means more than status. A quiet moment followed, filled with unspoken understanding. For the first time, Ethan felt like someone saw him beyond the title, beyond the image he carried in the corporate world. Anna began to check the monitors, jotting down notes, but she could feel his eyes on her. You must get tired of all this, he said suddenly. The late hours, the stress. She chuckled softly. Of course I do, but this is where I belong. Helping people makes me feel human. He leaned back in the chair, studying her. You remind me of my mother, he said after a pause. She had that same kind of strength, quiet but unshakable. Anna's expression softened. She sounds like she was a good person. She was, he said, his voice low. She passed when I was in college. My father never really recovered. Anna looked at him, her tone kind. Grief has its own clock. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it never really leaves. He nodded, his jaw tightening slightly. I built my life to avoid it, to stay busy. I guess that is why we grew apart. She wanted to say something comforting, but the words stayed in her throat. There was something about him, something fragile beneath his composed exterior, that made her realize he was not as untouchable as he looked. Just then, Mr. Carter stirred and opened his eyes. Ethan? He murmured weakly. Ethan leaned forward instantly, his voice softening. I am here, Dad. The old man's lips curved into a tired smile. Good. Do not stay up too late, son. You have a big world to run. Ethan chuckled quietly. The world can wait. Anna stood quietly, watching the exchange. In that small moment, she saw something she had never expected a man stripped of pretense, vulnerable, human. Later that night, when she clocked out and walked to her car, she caught herself smiling. She did not know why, but something about seeing Ethan with his father stayed with her. It was rare, she thought, to witness a person rediscovering what truly mattered. Meanwhile, Ethan stood by his father's bedside, lost in thought. The nurse's words echoed in his mind. Kindness means more than status. For a man who had built his life on power and success, those words hit deeper than he expected. As he looked at his sleeping father, he made a quiet promise to be there, not just financially but fully. And somewhere deep down, he knew that the nurse with the gentle voice had been the one to remind him how to start. The following week brought subtle but undeniable changes. Ethan continued to visit the hospital every day, often arriving before sunrise with coffee in hand for himself and, quietly, for Anna too. At first, she protested, insisting she could not accept anything from a patient's family, but he only smiled and said, "Consider it a thank you for taking care of him." Soon, it became a quiet ritual. They would share a few moments in the hallway before Ethan entered his father's room, exchanging small talk that somehow grew more personal each day. Anna began to see a side of him few probably ever had: the man behind the suit. Someone still learning how to connect after years of guarding himself. One evening, as the hospital lights dimmed and the air grew still, Anna found Ethan standing by his father's window, staring out at the city lights below. Long day? She asked gently. He turned, smiling faintly. The longest. But this, being here, it feels different, real. She stepped closer, sensing the weight in his voice. Sometimes the quiet moments remind us of what we have been running from, she said softly. He nodded, glancing at his father resting peacefully. You are right. I have spent years building things, companies, deals, structures, but I forgot about people, my own father. Anna looked at him, her voice calm. It is never too late to start again. Ethan's eyes met hers, and for a moment the air between them shifted. It was not romantic, not yet, but it was something deeper, something rooted in recognition. Before either could speak again, the sound of a nurse calling Anna's name broke the moment. She gave him an apologetic smile. Duty calls, she said. He nodded, watching as she walked away, her footsteps fading into the corridor. That night, Ethan stayed longer than usual. He sat beside his father, listening to the rhythmic beeping of the machines and thinking about the woman who somehow brought warmth into this sterile place. She reminded him of what genuine humanity looked like, something he had not felt in a long time. The next morning, Anna arrived early for her shift, but something felt different. The staff were whispering. When she reached room 214, Ethan was already there, looking tense. What happened? She asked quickly. He had some trouble breathing overnight, Ethan said. his voice tight but controlled. They stabilized him, but the doctors said his condition is weakening. Anna's heart sank. She moved to check the monitors, her hands steady despite the ache in her chest. "He is still with us," she said softly. "He is strong." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his composure breaking slightly. "I do not know what I will do without him." Anna placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "You are here. That is what matters most to him right now." He looked at her hand, then at her eyes, and nodded silently. Over the next few days, Ethan barely left his father's side. Anna came and went as her shifts allowed, but every time she entered the room, Ethan was there tired, unshaven, but steadfast. They began to talk more during those long hours, about life, about loss, and about the strange comfort of being seen by someone who understood pain. One night, as Anna replaced the IV fluids, Mr. Carter stirred and whispered weakly, "You take care of her, son." Ethan froze. "What?" Mr. Carter's eyes opened slightly, and he looked between the two of them, a faint smile on his lips. "She is special. Do not let her go unnoticed." Anna blushed, shaking her head. "You should rest, Mr. Carter." He chuckled faintly. "Even in this state, I can still see what is right in front of me." Ethan tried to smile, but emotion caught in his throat. Anna adjusted the blanket, her face flushed but composed. As the night grew quiet, Ethan sat back, the echo of his father's words lingering in his mind. He looked at Anna one last time before she left the room, realizing for the first time that this was more than gratitude or admiration. It was something beginning to take root, fragile but real. In the stillness of that hospital room, amidst the beeping machines and fading strength of an old man's breath, a new story was quietly unfolding. The following days blurred into a haze of long nights and anxious waiting. Mr. Carter's health continued to decline, and the hospital became a second home for both Anna and Ethan. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but also the quiet determination that refused to give up. Every time she entered the room, he would be there sitting by his father's side, reading old letters, or just holding his hand. The once polished businessman now looked like any other son, stripped of pride and power, clinging to moments that mattered. One evening, as the sky outside dimmed to a deep shade of orange, Anna stepped into the room with a fresh blanket. Mr. Carter was asleep, his breathing shallow but peaceful. Ethan looked up from his chair, his voice low. "He seems calmer tonight." Anna nodded. "He always rests better when you are here." Ethan gave a faint smile. "I used to think I could fix everything with money, but being here it feels like I am finally learning what really matters." Anna's voice softened. "Sometimes the most valuable things cannot be bought. They have to be felt." Ethan's gaze lingered on her for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Then he nodded slowly. "You make that sound easy." She smiled. "It is not, but it is worth it." Silence settled between them, comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. The sound of the heart monitor filled the air like a steady rhythm of life. Ethan leaned back in his chair, looking at his father, then at Anna. "You know," he said quietly, "before all this, I never took the time to notice people. I thought success meant always moving forward, never stopping. But watching you, you stop for everyone. You listen, you care. I do not know how you do it." Anna hesitated, unsure how to respond. "It is just part of who I am, I guess. The world can be harsh. Kindness is the only thing that makes it bearable." Ethan nodded slowly. "You are right, and I am realizing how rare that is." There was something in his voice, sincerity, maybe even admiration, that made Anna's heart beat faster. Before she could reply, Mr. Carter stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Ethan," he whispered weakly. Ethan moved closer immediately. "I am here, Dad." Mr. Carter smiled faintly. "You have been here every day. Your mother would be proud." Ethan's voice caught. "I just want to make it right." The old man's hand trembled as he reached for his son's. "You already have," he murmured. His gaze shifted toward Anna. "And you thank you for taking care of an old fool." Anna smiled, holding back tears. "You are no fool, Mr. Carter. You have raised a good man." The old man chuckled softly. "Took him long enough to show it." Ethan smiled through his emotion. The moment felt heavy and sacred, suspended in time. Later that night, when Anna finished her shift, she walked out into the parking lot and saw Ethan leaning against his car. He looked tired but peaceful, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "You should rest." she said softly. You have been here for days. He nodded. I will, but I wanted to thank you first. Not just for my father for being here, for reminding me what it means to care again. Anna felt her chest tighten. You do not have to thank me. It is what I do. Ethan shook his head. No, it is more than that. You do it because it is who you are, and that is rare. For a moment they stood there in the quiet, the cool night air carrying the scent of rain. Neither spoke, but their eyes said everything words could not. Then Ethan opened the car door and paused. My father always said that people cross our paths for a reason. Maybe he was right. Anna smiled faintly, watching as he drove away, the sound of his engine fading into the distance. As she stood under the soft glow of the hospital lights, she could not shake the feeling that something inside her had changed. She did not know where it would lead, but she knew one thing for certain: their lives had just become intertwined in a way that neither could undo. The following morning, the hospital felt quieter than usual. Anna arrived early, her steps echoing softly in the hall as she made her way toward room 214. When she entered, the sight before her made her stop. Ethan was still there, sitting beside his father, his suit jacket draped over the chair, his eyes heavy from lack of sleep. The coffee cup on the table was cold, untouched. You stayed all night again, Anna said gently, setting down a fresh chart. Ethan looked up, a faint smile crossing his tired face. I could not leave him, he said quietly. Every time I think about going home, I feel like I might miss something. Anna nodded, understanding. He is resting. That is what matters. She checked Mr. Carter's vitals and made small adjustments to his IV line. Her movements were calm and methodical, but her heart ached watching the son who had built empires now clinging to the fragility of time. After a moment, Ethan spoke again, his voice low. You ever wonder why people like me forget what really matters? Anna glanced at him. Because the world teaches us to measure worth by the wrong things, she said softly. Titles, money, success, they make noise. But the quiet things, the ones that matter, get drowned out. Ethan leaned back, his expression thoughtful. And you? What keeps you grounded? She paused for a moment before answering. People, the ones who cannot afford the noise, the ones who remind me why I do this. There was a sincerity in her tone that made him look at her differently, as if seeing her for the first time all over again. You know, he said, I built my life on logic and results. But lately, you make me question everything I thought I knew. Anna smiled faintly, shaking her head. Do not question, just feel. That is usually where the truth is. The room fell into silence again, but it was a peaceful one. Outside, the early light began to spill through the blinds, casting a soft glow over the room. Mr. Carter stirred slightly, and Ethan immediately reached for his hand. The gesture was small, but full of meaning. Hours passed. Anna continued her rounds, but her mind kept drifting back to that room. She had seen countless families break under the weight of illness, yet something about this one felt different. There was a strength between father and son that reminded her of her own father, who had passed years ago. Maybe that was why she cared more than she should. Later that afternoon, Ethan found her in the staff lounge, sipping from a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. I wanted to ask you something, he said, standing at the doorway. She looked up, slightly surprised. Of course, he hesitated. My father, he wanted to do something for the nurses here. He told me once that you are the reason he feels safe. I want to honor that, maybe create something lasting in his name. A foundation, perhaps. Anna blinked, caught off guard by his sincerity. That is a beautiful idea, she said quietly. But are you sure? You have not even. She stopped herself, realizing how that sentence would end. Ethan's smile was small, almost wistful. I am sure, he said. He would want something good to come from this. For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of what was coming hung in the air, unspoken but understood. That evening, when Anna returned to room 214, Ethan was sitting by the window, watching the sunset. The light painted his face in shades of gold and sorrow. He is sleeping peacefully, Anna said softly, adjusting the blanket. Ethan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. I know. I can feel it. Maybe for the first time he is really at peace. Anna stood beside him, their silence saying more than words could. The faint sound of the monitor filled the room, steady and rhythmic. And for that moment, they both let themselves simply be two people caught between loss and hope, standing quietly in the fading light, waiting for whatever tomorrow would bring. The following morning arrived with a strange stillness, the kind that felt heavy before the world even woke. Anna entered the hospital just as the sun began to rise, the faint orange light stretching across the floors of the corridor. Her steps were soft but hurried as she approached room 214, praying silently that the old man had made it through the night. When she opened the door, the sight before her made her heart tighten. Ethan was standing by the bed, his head bowed, holding his father's hand. The machines beside them were quiet, their usual rhythmic beeping replaced by silence. Mr. Carter was gone. For a long moment, Anna could not move. Then, slowly, she walked forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am so sorry, Ethan." He turned to her, his face pale, eyes filled with a quiet grief that words could never touch. "He passed a few hours ago," Ethan said softly, peacefully. "He did not suffer." Anna nodded, tears pricking her eyes. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "He was surrounded by love. That is what matters most." Ethan swallowed hard, his voice trembling slightly. "He said your name before he went. He told me to make sure I looked after you." The words caught Anna off guard. "He did?" Ethan nodded, trying to smile through the pain. "He said you reminded him of Mom. He said you have the same light." For the first time since she met him, Anna saw Ethan not as the composed businessman or the wealthy son, but as a man stripped down to his rawest self, a son, saying goodbye to his father. She stayed beside him as the doctors came to confirm the passing and as the nurses quietly began to remove the equipment. Time moved differently in those moments, stretching and collapsing all at once. When it was finally over, Ethan remained seated beside the bed, his hand still resting over his father's. Anna stood near the door, giving him space, but ready if he needed her. Eventually, he looked up, his eyes glassy but steady. "You do not have to stay," he said quietly. "You have done enough." She shook her head. "No, I will stay until you are ready to leave." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded, unable to speak. Hours later, as the sun reached its highest point, Ethan finally stood. He took one last look at his father, then turned to Anna. "He is free now," he said. "He always said he wanted to see Mom again." Anna nodded, her heart aching for him. "And he will. People like him never truly leave. They just change how they stay with us." Her words seemed to reach him, and for a brief moment, something in his expression softened. He took a slow breath. "You always know what to say." Anna offered a gentle smile. "Only because I have stood where you are." They walked out together, the hallway silent except for their footsteps. The weight of loss hung heavy between them, but underneath it was a strange calm like the first quiet after a storm. That evening, Anna found herself sitting alone in the small cafe across the street from the hospital, staring at her cup of tea. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but she could not shake the image of Ethan standing by his father's bedside. The strength and vulnerability he had shown stayed with her. She was still lost in thought when the doorbell chimed and someone sat down across from her. It was Ethan. He looked different out of the hospital, still tired, but lighter somehow, as if a burden had been lifted. "I thought you might be here," he said, offering a small smile. "I wanted to thank you again, for everything. You were there for him when I could not be." Anna shook her head. "You were there. That is what mattered most." Ethan hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "My father had already signed the papers for the foundation before he passed. He wanted you to be part of it." Anna's breath caught. "Me?" Ethan nodded. "He said it was your compassion that inspired it, and I agree. I would not even be doing this if not for you." Anna's eyes welled with tears. "Ethan, I do not know what to say." "Just say yes," he said softly. "Help me make his legacy mean something." For a long moment, Anna could not speak. Then, finally, she nodded. "Yes, I will." And as they sat there in that small corner cafe, two lives forever changed by loss began to find purpose again. Weeks passed after Mr. Carter's funeral, and the world seemed to move on. But for Ethan and Anna, everything felt different. They had both returned to their daily lives, yet something tied them together beyond what words could explain. The Carter Foundation was officially established, a promise fulfilled in honor of Ethan's father, and true to Mr. Carter's wish, Anna became part of it. What started as a simple act of gratitude grew into something bigger. Anna took charge of the Foundation's community outreach program, focusing on helping elderly patients who could not afford proper care. It was the kind of work that spoke to her soul, the kind that made her long hours and sleepless nights worth it. Ethan, meanwhile, oversaw the financial and administrative side, though he often found himself joining Anna in the field. Watching her interact with people, seeing how her compassion reached places money never could, reminded him of his father's words, "She is special. Do not let her go unnoticed." One late afternoon, Anna stood outside a care center they had helped renovate. The sun was setting behind her, painting the sky in soft orange and gold hues. She looked over the courtyard, where volunteers and patients were laughing together. Ethan approached quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You really made this place come alive," he said, handing her one. Anna smiled, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the evening light. "We did it together." Ethan shook his head slightly. "You did this. I just provided the means." Anna took a sip of her coffee and looked at him with gentle firmness. "No, Ethan. You gave people hope. That is worth more than money." He studied her for a moment, her sincerity cutting through the armor he still sometimes wore. "You always know how to make me see things differently," he said quietly. "Maybe that is why my father trusted you more than anyone." Anna's eyes softened. "Your father trusted you too, Ethan. He just wanted you to see what he already saw, a man with a good heart." Ethan looked away, his jaw tightening, emotion flickering across his face. "He would have loved to see this," he said. "The foundation, the people, you." Anna placed a comforting hand on his arm. "He does see it. You are carrying him with you in everything you do." For a moment, they stood in silence, the hum of laughter and conversation around them fading into the background. The connection between them had grown naturally, built on shared grief, shared purpose, and an unspoken understanding that neither of them could quite define. Over the following weeks, their work drew them even closer. They spent long hours planning projects, visiting hospitals, and attending charity events. Each time their hands brushed while reaching for the same document or when their eyes met across a room full of people, it became harder to ignore what was growing between them. One evening, after a successful fundraiser, they found themselves alone in the quiet of the foundation's office. The city lights glowed faintly through the large windows, casting soft reflections on the polished floor. Anna was gathering papers when Ethan spoke. "You know," he said, leaning against the desk, "I never imagined my life would look like this." She looked up, curious. "Like what?" "Peaceful," he said simply. "For so long, everything was about ambition, control, and numbers. Now, it feels human again, because of you." Anna's heart skipped. "Ethan," she began, but he continued, his voice low but steady. "You reminded me that it is okay to feel, to care, to slow down. I do not know how to thank you for that." She smiled softly. "You just did." For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension between them was not uncomfortable but deep, heavy with emotions neither dared to name. Then Ethan took a small step forward. "I know we started all this because of him," he said quietly, "but now, I cannot imagine doing it without you." Anna met his gaze, her voice gentle. "You are not doing it without me. We are in this together." He nodded, his eyes holding hers, the silence between them saying what words could not. Outside, the city moved on as it always did. But inside that office, something lasting had begun to take root, something stronger than grief, softer than friendship, and more real than either of them had expected. Months passed, and the foundation continued to grow beyond what either of them had imagined. The name Carter had become a symbol of kindness and change, not just wealth. Anna had poured her heart into every project, and Ethan had used his influence and resources to make those dreams real. Together, they built something that mattered, something his father would have been proud of. Yet beneath all the success, something deeper had quietly blossomed between them. It was not rushed or forced. It was steady, like the slow blooming of spring after a long winter. One evening, after the foundation's annual charity gala, the two of them found themselves walking through the quiet city streets. The air was crisp, and the soft glow of the streetlights cast a warm shimmer across the wet pavement. Anna held her coat close, her heels clicking softly on the ground. Ethan walked beside her, hands in his pockets, glancing at her every so often with that familiar look, gentle, curious, and full of unspoken meaning. "You looked nervous tonight," he said, smiling faintly. "First big speech?" Anna laughed quietly. "Maybe. I have talked to patients and families all my life, but standing in front of all those people in suits was different. I'm just glad I did not trip." Ethan chuckled. "You were perfect. You spoke from the heart. That is what people remember." She looked at him, her expression soft. "I could not have done any of this without you." He stopped walking, turning to face her under the glow of a lamppost. "That is not true. you would have done it anyway. You have always had this fire in you, the kind that changes everything it touches. Anna looked down, a hint of blush coloring her cheeks. You always know what to say. Ethan's voice lowered, more serious now. Only when it comes to you. The world around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of distant traffic and the quiet beating of their hearts. Anna took a slow breath. Ethan, your father would be proud of what you have done. Ethan's eyes glistened slightly. I hope so. But honestly, I think he would be prouder that I finally stopped running from what matters. And what is that? She asked softly. Ethan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. People, connection. You. The single word hung in the air, heavy and sincere. Anna's breath caught, but before she could respond, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver bracelet with a single charm shaped like a lily. Your favorite flower, he said quietly. My father used to say white lilies meant renewal, new beginnings. I thought it was fitting. Anna stared at it, her eyes welling with tears. Ethan, it is beautiful. He gently fastened it around her wrist, his fingers brushing against her skin. It is a reminder, he said, his voice soft but firm, that from loss can come something beautiful, that we can build something new. Anna looked up at him, her voice trembling. You already have. For a long moment they stood there in silence, the night air wrapping around them like a promise. Then slowly, Ethan reached for her hand. She did not pull away. Instead, she smiled through the tears that had begun to fall. You know, she said softly, for someone who used to hide behind boardrooms and numbers, you are getting good at this whole emotional thing. Ethan laughed quietly. I had a good teacher. As they continued walking, hand in hand, the city lights shimmered ahead of them, reflecting off the glass buildings like stars scattered across the skyline. In that moment, both of them knew that their lives had changed forever, not because of money or loss, but because two hearts had found each other in the unlikeliest of places. The caregiver who sang softly to a dying man had unknowingly healed his son too, not with medicine or miracles, but with compassion and truth. And as the night settled over the city, one chapter ended, and another quietly began a story, not of grief, but of grace, love, and second chances.